Imagine, if you can, that you're a juror on a trial. A wife is accused of killing her husband, and a handful of eyewitnesses earnestly claim that she lifted him up into the air with her sorcery and tossed him off of the Grand Canyon. Would you believe them? Wouldn't you, at the very least, have an incredibly strong initial skepticism, even though there are flesh and blood people standing right in front of you testifying to the fact that it happened? Now ask yourself, do you apply that same level of skepticism to the belief that a guy came back to life and floated into the sky based on accounts written decades after the fact? Or does that get a pass because it brings meaning to your life? Now let me pause for a second to give some clarification. I'm not necessarily accusing you, dear listener, of having a double standard. I'm just asking you to give an honest self-assessment. Do you want to know why? Well, it's because myself and many others who have walked away will tell you that this is something that we ourselves were guilty of. So I ask again, is that you? I'm also not claiming that this example is some kind of perfect mirror image of the resurrection, but given the title of the video, we should consider more concrete reasons for you to doubt, shouldn't we? You might start by wondering whether there even is a God to raise Jesus from the dead in the first place. Well, probably not. But even if there were a God, we can tell how he normally behaves by looking around. And he doesn't normally tend to raise people from the dead. Given this fact, no matter what you believe about God, your bullshit detector should probably be going off when you hear miracle claims, like, I don't know, a resurrection? You might also start worrying about some of the evidence that we actually have, like the nature of Paul's conversion experience, discord between the gospel accounts, signs of legendary development, unrealistic features of the resurrection traditions, or the dissonance reduction strategies that the New Testament authors employed. And why are all of these God-hating, and a lot of times Christian, scholars claiming things like, the four Gospels are notoriously difficult to use as sources for reconstructing the historical Jesus. Their faith perspective, their literary interdependence, and the major and minor disagreements among them make a satisfying account of the events of Jesus' life impossible. The Gospels are severely limited as historical sources. And heaven forbid when ecumenical study Bibles say things like, scholars generally agree that the Gospels were written 40 to 60 years after the death of Jesus. They are not eyewitness or contemporary accounts of Jesus' life and teaching. It's gotta be their anti-supernatural bias, right? Also, don't pay too much attention to the fact that the Ascension seems to presuppose an ancient idea of a three-storied universe. That's not important. To make things worse, there are passages in the Old Testament, like Deuteronomy 18, that claim false predictions prove that someone is a false prophet, and if you happen to take the Gospels at face value, it looks like Jesus was a failed apocalyptic prophet who mistakenly predicted his return within a very short time frame. Additionally, there are other passages that suggest that the main way to tell whether someone's from God is not whether they can perform signs and wonders, but with whether their teaching is, generally speaking, in accordance with what's already been passed down. And if we're talking about the continuity between the Old Testament and the New Testament, then it's not looking good for Jesus. This is even more apparent when we look at all the amazing prophecies that supposedly point to Jesus in the Old Testament, or at how the New Testament authors use the Old Testament more generally. They weren't trying to respect the original context of these writings, but rather they were trying to use them for their own ends, like everyone else in the Second Temple period. But, you might ask, what about the Christians I've cited while giving reasons for doubt? They still believe in the resurrection, don't they? Probably based mostly on religious experience, but there's tons of problems with that too. Even if you aren't as skeptical towards a lot of this as I am, if you're a Christian, you still need to ask yourself an important question. Why is the evidence for the resurrection genuinely debatable? Here's one option. It's not true.